So I was just using my cooler as usual when all of a sudden the lights went out. When I went to the breaker panel to investigate, I saw that the RCCB or Residual Current Circuit Breaker had tripped. Now, what's an RCCB? A RCCB is a safety device which cuts power when it detects an imbalance between live and neutral. In a normal circuit, the flowing current in both live and neutral should be the same. But when a slightly conductive material like water or human skin touches live, some portion of that current begins flowing to earth, which creates an imbalance which the RCCB detects and then cuts power to prevent the person from getting shocked or water damaging the appliance. And since a desert cooler has a lot of flowing water, I suspect that some water may have seeped into the motor or the electrical board, which then caused the RCCB to trip. So, after switching off the cooler, I restored power. Now, before we get to troubleshooting, let's first understand how a desert cooler works. It mainly has a main water tank, a temporary water reservoir, a fan, dry grass, and a pump which is enclosed inside. Water is stored in the main tank and is pumped into the temporary reservoir, where it is distributed among all the dry grass, and gravity does its thing to bring it back into the main tank. This makes the dry grass wet, and when we pull air through it, it acts like a radiator and cools the air passing through it. The fan pulls in air from the grass and exhausts it from the front. Now that we know how a desert cooler works, let's begin troubleshooting. We first remove the temporary reservoir. And while disconnecting the pump, I immediately noticed the problem. The coupler from the pump pipe, which led to the temporary reservoir, was loose. This is why water was dripping down into the motor from the reservoir. When I tried to tighten it, the threads on it were damaged, so it had to be replaced completely. It was so damaged that it came off by itself when I tried to lift the reservoir. And unfortunately, I didn't have a fitting replacement with that specific size, so I had to get creative. I completely removed the pipe from the coupler and pinched it in such a way that I could reuse the old O ring and fit it inside the pipe. I again pinched the pipe in such a way that it could fit through the already existing hole in the reservoir. Since the pipe is made out of flexible material, it acts as a sealer itself and prevents anything from leaking. I also use this male coupler part to seal it further from the top. And when I try to lift the reservoir, the pipe doesn't come off. Nice. I also trimmed the pointy pieces of grass so there wouldn't be any water dripping down the middle. I then removed the front cover so that I could access the motor and electrical wiring. I wanted to attach this plastic cover so I could protect it from potential water leaks. I am doing all of this insulation and covering as a second layer of protection, just in case the coupler fails or water somehow leaks into the electrical system. After I was done attaching the cover, I began using insulation tape to seal off any electrical parts which had even the smallest of openings. And I also gave more attention to the capacitor because, in my opinion, it was the reason why the breaker tripped because water had gotten into the terminals. I gave it a plastic cover and, of course, a layer of insulation tape to completely seal it off. And then, with more tape, I mounted it to the frame. Now it's time to reassemble everything. I began by reattaching the front panel and then bringing the temporary reservoir into place. I connected the pump, and after adding the few final screws, everything was done. And on the first test run, the pump worked beautifully, and there were also no leaks. The fan also ran smoothly and gave a nice cool breeze. And I also reused the female coupler to hold the water cover in place. It didn't have to have a strong joint because it only had to be loosely held in place. And overall, I'd call this project a success, as after a few weeks of rigorous testing, it hasn't caused a single problem and works perfectly to this day. And that's about it for this video. I hope you learned something new, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing.